May the 12th, May the 27th, May the 12th, May the 27th, 2024. Bloop. Hey, here we go. Rock and good roll. That Professor Jim Smith from United Kingdom, man. What a just... there should be a permanent memorial for him of the world's worst human. Nuscale is back in the news. More news about Russia's got to bomb you if you sneeze in their directions. It took me an extra couple minutes. My apologies. I had to plug in the gimbal and the camera batteries. I forgot to do it. We launch tomorrow. Tomorrow, the small zodiac goes to war. It's a big day. Trust me. So, is that backwards or something? Yeah, there you go. That should have been that one. So the show last night was hour 38:47. And after the show was over, we had one view. We had 70 people on it. We had 31 likes, but we only had four views. So 1 hour 38:47, 1 hour 38:47. That's 11 hours later. So every video, 12 hours later, something changes on my video. My comments will actually show up also. There's many things that happens after 12 hours that don't happen in anybody else's video. We assume they're putting software in it to track you. So that's why you should watch it in the first 12 hours if you can. So it went from... Now last night, and I'll show you the other video, 138.47 for last night. And at 12 hours is 138.56. So an extra 9 seconds. Which is your, typically it's around 7 seconds different or something like that. But Thursday's video, 2 hour 44 minute 34 second video on the die-offs, they chopped out, and at 11 hours it was still 2:44:34. At 12 hours, 2:42:28. So 2 hours and 14 seconds or something, is it? That got chopped out. And so, like, you know how much information I put out in a 2-minute period when if you chopped out 2 minutes of my top information, that's a lot of top information, right? That's most likely what they're up to. Gonna have to get off the site. I'm worried about their tracking everybody. We're gonna have to use another site. Protesters, or shoot the video and just post the video, because if I just post a video, they don't chop it. Protester and ex-candidate to plead guilty to seeking nuclear material. So this story was a couple of years ago. Probably the most important, one of the most, if not the most important story about nuclear is this particular story. And so this protester ex-candidate, political candidate, was going to plead guilty to seeking nuclear material, but he won't get prison under the deal. A deal. Cut a deal. A noted Madison protester, former congressional candidate who was arrested last year after the FBI agents said they caught him, which is no doubt the ones that put radioactive material online, caught him trying to buy radioactive material online. And allegedly he was going to kill someone. Will plead guilty Friday to one of the charges against him. It will not serve any time in prison under a plea agreement. Under a plea agreement. Just bear with me there. Something must have fell out there because I got all the camera equipment out there. Must have been something got loose or something. I heard some noise that shouldn't have been there. So what happened was he was originally charged with attempting to possess radioactive material with the intent to cause death or serious bodily injuries, essentially a nuclear terrorism charge. He tried to buy polonium-210 on the dark web on an FBI honeypot. But his lawyers Bugney said Ryan was trying to kill himself to make it appear that he was killed by the government, using a substance most likely the government was the only one that had access to. But in March, Booney and Myers, the two lawyers, filed a serious motions to dismiss the indictment against Ryan, asserting that nuclear terrorism charges under which he's charged is unconstitutional. And the kicker was, Congress lacks the authority to criminalize poisoning with radioactive substances. So they had a law, but the Congress didn't have the authority to make the law. And so if you pleaded guilty, didn't contest the law, didn't keep the law on the books, and use it to bludgeon somebody else with it later, right? But Congress in the United States, Parliament in Canada, the Diet in Japan, and the list goes on, the government doesn't have the authority in nuclear countries. Only the nuclear agency does. In these cases, considered the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has the authorities to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. But the government doesn't have the authority. The government has the authority to make it illegal to poison you with any other chemical except for radiation. And every administration, even if this administration of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the non-regulatory commissions, their actual real names, made it illegal to poison you with radiation, the next administration could flip it, right? And the idea was they can't poison you or the animals or anybody else if it's illegal. They can't use it to kill you in your hospitals. They can't murder you with the radiation therapy, which really we should be launching. We should have had a launch. We should have launched a lawsuit against that a long time ago, see? And this was an older video. A daily podcast is Fukushima water dangerous. And this was August the 24th, 2023. And which last year, August the 24th, was the day that Japan said they were releasing their very first batch of water, treated water, of tritium from Fukushima. So they had Jim Smith, notorious monster, sadistic demon, a criminal, a murderer. He should be arrested for crimes against humanity. And he most likely will be in the future. The world is starting to come to their senses. And people like this should be held accountable. We strongly advocate to be held accountable and be given the death penalty for what they're doing. What they're doing is genocide. There's a professor of environmental science, and this is the stuff they would chop out of my videos, by the way, after 12 hours. Professor of environmental science at the University of Portsmouth dispels concerns over the level of radiation, insisting there's no need to worry. Insisting. So it's on Sky News Daily with Niall Paterson. And this is the sadistic monster right there. He's actually a monster. We've covered him hundreds of times now. He's a prolific monster. And he does it by suggesting that it's like a banana and sunshine and the radiation, which is completely different. These simply have nothing to do with each other. Tritium. Now, this is the same day TEPCO announced that they're releasing their first batch or not released, not announced, but the first day that they alleged release of radiation so allegedly nothing got out of that building for 12 and a half years. Don't believe me. Ask all these academics and Jim Smith. They'll tell you nothing got out of the building. But I'm contending that everything got out of the building. I was trying to make a joke, but it doesn't quite work because I got a picture there. And there's not really much to joke about, is it? Except for what the other prisoners will do to him if they catch him. Professor of Environmental Science at the University of Portsmouth. He's a professor, so every female student and male should be interviewed that he's ever had to see if they were sexually abused by him. Because anybody that's willing to come out and murder you is certainly willing to molest your children, right? Studying, they all find the same thing, that the dose is probably 2,000 times lower than we get from cosmic radiation, from natural radioactivity, from cosmic rays, from natural. There is no natural radioactivity. Like, we describe radioactivity as something you can make, it comes from a chain reaction that is anthropogenic, man-made, pre-nuclear industry, right? And so they conflated the two of them, and in order to make, because the average person just simply has been brainwashed never to peek at this industry. And I'm not kidding you either, right? They've been lulled into complacency by Spider-Man, the Hulk, generationally too, right? You know, their great-great-grandparents watched the Spider-Man cartoons and the Hulk cartoons, and their children watched it, and then their children watched it, and the current generation is the same thing, right? Where, in fact, the last couple of generations have been bombarded post-Fukushima with the nuclear industry's propaganda. See, like, the stuff that he's talking about has nothing to do with anthropogenic man-made radiation. They're completely different. You can make a dirty bomb out of tritium, but you can't make a dirty bomb out of potassium or magnesium or the so-called natural radiation that is not radiation. You can't make a dirty bomb out of natural radiation. Because the stuff that they're talking about is the stuff that you eat in your food, stuff that you're made of in your bodies, the cosmic radiation. You can't put fucking cosmic radiation in a bottle and strap some conventional explosive to it and blow it up and contaminate a fucking city. I apologize there, kind of lost it for a second. I'm sorry. Sue me. So it's not something I think we shouldn't. I think people like this should be convicted in court. There should be hundreds of documentaries on how evil he is, and he should get the death penalty. And the world should rejoice every day on the anniversary of the day that he was executed publicly by the government. It should be like a holiday. I bet you people are going to think I'm kidding. Good for you. France tests a cutting-edge nuclear missile ahead of 2035. Ahead of what's going to happen in 2035? It doesn't make any sense, right? Doom, 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 doom. You need some dramatic music for that particular headline, don't you? Ahead of 2035. I gotta drink my tea while it's warm tonight. If you don't like my slurping, sue me. Actually, I can turn it. I could turn it down, see, but I'm too stupid to do that. There's nothing stupider looking than somebody in a pilot uniform, the military pilot uniform. Literally as stupidest costume I've ever saw on top of that. France is the only NATO country that uses cruise missiles with nuclear warheads. Oh, the only NATO country. Durka Durka. Although work is already underway on its hypersonic successor. Oh yeah, every nuclear weapon, bigger, badder, quicker, stupider. Paris is not neglecting the modernization of its existing arsenal. To this end, it tested the latest variants of their missile, also known as Stupid. Its nickname is Stupid, because it can't be used. The French doctrine also envisions possibility of de-escalatory warning nuclear strikes of low-level yield compared to what? compared to Castle Bravo, I don't know, which is equal to 1,000 Nagasaki's, which is a plutonium bomb. France introduced a missile in 1980 and continues to operate, modernize, and develop its variants. Stupid and stupider. Of course, when you look at France's legacy, woo-wee! One of the largest underground uranium mines in the world closes its door in a subsidy of Orano, which is ex-Areva. Areva went bankrupt, so they didn't have to deal with the nuclear waste for a million years. Their responsibilities that they already been paid for. Take the money and run. So Niger, they used Niger because France gets all of its fuel from Niger, so they created a civil war there for almost 60 years ago or something, still raging today. They got 4,000 troops there to protect their interests. And do you think these people are getting paid much money there's 100,000 of them. Do you think they're getting paid like a typical uranium company would pay somebody? Or do you think they're being robbed? And all the tailings left over is poisoned their fresh water and their farms, right? And then they just throw them away like a paper towel when they're finished with them, of course. And that's why France's reactors, they brag about how France uses the most reactors and this and that. But they caused a civil war. They destroyed hundreds of thousands of people's lives so they can get their hands on cheaper uranium. Think about the French nuclear tests exposed the entire Polynesian population to radiation, a new study revealed in 2021. The numbers were the equivalent of a Nagasaki bomb, not a Hiroshima, not a uranium bomb, but a plutonium bomb, every week for 12 years. So there's every illness out there you can imagine, including cancer. And nuclear causes just hideous health effects, heart, liver, lung, respiratory, the very long list. Now the Sahara dust returns radiation from the French nuclear test in the 1960s. The Sahara dust is still radioactive, which blows all the way to France. They irradiate themselves every year, and they deny the French Polynesians any health care. And France still hasn't told the Algerians where they buried their nuclear waste to. Should France tell people where they buried their nuclear waste? Or at least go back and clean it up? Is that asking for too much? Should geothermal that actually exists replace the small modular reactors that don't exist in conversations about nuclear power plants? And 2 people said no. 2 people panicked, eh? Oh, you panic. Oh, holy shit, we got 18 people on our show. I better smarten up here. It's been a long time since I've seen 18 people on my show. I know, I haven't even had it for a dozen years, but if you work really hard, it can happen to you. You can get 18 people on your show, too. Especially if you work as hard as I do. Don't worry, everybody can do it. The final one, France is going to give millions of victims around nuclear power plants iodine pills, which are useless. The iodine is still going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, along with the gammas, the alphas, the neutrons, and the betas. If you live within 100 miles of a nuclear plant, you're being poisoned all day, every day. If you live within 15 miles of a nuclear power plant, there's 6 times more breast cancer. So if you got daughters, don't move there. Unless you're stupid. Unless you're pro-nuclear, of course. No, don't even move there. I wouldn't wish it even on your kids, you pieces of shit. Is Russia planning a tactical nuclear strike, right? Don't you just hate these people? It's not hard to hate these people. Is Russia planning a tactical nuclear strike? course they're not. If you go way down in the story, it's unlikely. So why not have that in the headline instead of the fear-mongering? Because the average person doesn't read the story. And in addition, it's meaningless. It's about, like, remember when this started, right? In North America, I don't know about anywhere else, but in Canada, actually I know for a fact this happened in other countries, other continents. But in Canada, United States, the Girl Scouts were baking cookies and selling them to send money to Zelensky so he can buy weapons. Coffee shops were having like Ukraine Day, and they had their muffins with the Ukraine flag colors, patriotic. And the money was being raised for donuts and coffee that day. All went to Zelensky so he can buy weapons off the weapons manufacturer. The same ones Russia gets it from, of course, and everybody else gets it from. And this went on for a long time, right? Kids were bringing out their piggy banks. I want to eat Ukraine. And they were poisoned everywhere they went, especially the schools. Your fucking media? I don't know how you, I don't understand how there's not, how to get mass shootings in malls all the time. I'm surprised they don't show up at all the medias every other day. For the first time since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, Russia is conducting maneuvers with tactical atomic weapons. I mean, the Americans haven't stopped doing it. NATO hasn't stopped doing it. Because the war is not against Ukraine. This is a proxy war with NATO, right? Nuclear energy, bottom line. The United States used to build... We got a great show tonight, by the way. The United States used to build nuclear power plants affordably to meet our climate goal. No, they weren't building nuclear plants to meet the climate goal, you disgusting parasite. Well, we'll need to learn how to do it again. Because last year at Constipated Party 28, Conference of Parties, I'm sorry, I apologize. Conference of Parties, right? Not Constipated Parties. What was I thinking? Conference of Parties. 20 countries said they're going to triple their nuclear capacity. They don't give a fuck. They're going to kill half the planet. They're going to do it. Of course, it's ludicrous to suggest it. It's just ludicrous to suggest that the nuclear industry is capable of doubling it, tripling it. It's just an absurd... The Americans will have to build 200 more reactors. Did you see how long it took them to build their last 2 reactors? Even Westinghouse went bankrupt, for goodness sakes. Once a dream of endless emission-free power, it was never considered emission-free power. That was cooked up to promote nuclear post-Fukushima. Nuclear is the most resource-intensive industry in human history, for goodness sakes. La 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 la. How's the stream? Stream looks good on your end. I just gotta double check. Every once in a while I gotta double check my connection. Right, and but sometimes my screen goes this way, right? And so I don't know what's going on. And then you wonder if you're actually streaming, because you know how often you play games here. So because I have to do a new security password just before I go live every fucking night. Excuse the language here. Let's get back on track, shall we? And a nightmare of catastrophic meltdowns and radioactive waste. So imagine if they triple nuclear reactors worldwide. And they're going to do it in a rush too, right? How many of them are going to melt down? Quite a few of them, right? Look at the fucking nightmare they have with what they already got on the planet. What a disaster it's been, right? Japan picked up 30 million one-ton bags that they emit to. And we got the evidence we show quite often. And so, but we only got about 1,000 actual pictures. And so I've been using artificial intelligence to cook up a bunch of pictures to help articulate the 149,000 pictures we don't have, because you had 150,000 sites of 31 million or 30 million one-ton bags. There we go. Yeah, they picked up nuclear waste in 150,000 sites by 2016. By 2019, it was 105,000 sites. But imagine trying to move, and these bags have to be repackaged, they said, every 3 years, these one-ton black bags, right? So I made up a couple of thousand, 2,400 or something pictures now. But we got to make up 149,000 pictures total, because that's how many pictures are missing of the one-ton bags. And so typically they're going to look like this, just one-ton bags everywhere you look. The new plants are extremely expensive. There's an understatement. And well, they got to spend $100 million every year on these sites, right? Just in maintenance. So if you had geothermal, you don't got to spend anything. You got to buy a couple of 45-gallon drums of grease, but that's about it. But a nuke plant, you got to spend $100 million every year just on maintenance. Americans most recently attempted to build a nuclear disease factory in Georgia / nuclear power plant. But these are disease factories. Once you take the fuel out of the reactor core, the containment, and put it in the pool, there's no containment. It's still splitting atoms. It's like, this is why nuclear waste is so dangerous, because it's splitting atoms. And you get a single one in your body attacks with white blood cells until it builds a tumor around it. It was supposed to be completed in 4 years for $14 billion. Instead, it took more than 10 years and had a final price tag of $35 billion, about 10 times the cost of a natural gas plant with the same energy output. It took more than 10 years and had a final tag of $35 billion. It's like, the numbers are absurd. And you got to spend $100 million every year on it. Otherwise, it goes kapooey. And everybody got to run away and leave their homes and graveyards and pets and community behind. The Department of Energy estimated permanently that the country must, Department of Energy, no they didn't. This was the United Nations Constipated Party 28 last year in Dubai. It wasn't the Department of Energy. Right, there was 20 countries agreed to triple it, not the Department of Energy. Not a strike on shithead who wrote that story. But if you picked up just 40% of the Fukushima prefecture with one-ton bags, they've only picked up 3% of Fukushima prefecture of where they want people to farm and live to. But if you were to try to clean up the prefecture, it'd be 500 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. Is nuclear radiation, one-ton bags of radiation, is nuclear power output by 2050 to be on track for its climate targets? Climate targets. Nuclear! You guys are monsters. Like, nuclear is the most resource-intensive industry on the planet. It's the most pollutant. And it's pollution. It's not fear, is it, that I have to go into so much detail constantly for every single time I bring up a subject, because the world lacks a basic education about it. So you notice Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. Well, it was the straw that broke humanity's back in the 8 million species demise. So this plume is 19.5 days, 468 hours. It's a plume that's invisible, that never goes away, that never stops coming out, and pulses energy every second, almost at the speed of light. It's been going on for 80 years. And the nuclear testing was like nuts. But Fukushima, you can trace all the mass species die-off accelerations and supercell storms, for instance, and droughts and by proxy, of course, wildfires. You can trace all that post-Fukushima. If you look pre-Fukushima, you don't see these attributes. Post-Fukushima, that's where it's all, right? That's where it started. All the emaciated whales and seals and sea lions and birds. For all the recent progress in wind and solar renewables on their own almost certainly won't be enough. Renewables will... First off, nuclear is just one great big stupid disease factory. It hemorrhages radiation from every nuclear site, from the fuel pools. It's a nightmare. It's the best way to kill a planet is put nuclear plants around the planet, put fuel in the pools with no containment, and have them hemorrhaging radiation unmitigated into the environment. How do you get any eviler than that, I wonder? Like, all the evil on the planet still doesn't compare to nuclear. It really doesn't. Renewables on their own certainly won't be enough. Arguably, then, we have no choice but to figure out how to build nuclear. So there's nothing else out there. How about geothermal? Or how about the fact that on 21st of January 2024, nuclear went backwards again, and wind and solar enjoyed another year of record growth. Nuclear suffered a net loss in 2023 of 1.7 gigawatt capacity. But renewables added an additional 507 gigawatts, which is over 600 large nuclear reactors in renewables. So for them to say that renewables on their own can't do it, if you got renewables all across your country, if you got wind and solar all across the country, you say, oh, well, the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. But the wind does blow across the country all the time, right? If you put your windmills at the top of the mountains where it blows all the time, along the mountain where the wind is getting drafted, that'll be the end of your problem anyway. But geothermal, and then back it up with wind and solar and storage, like compressed air storage, where you dig mine shafts and compress air down there. And you can buy windmills, that's all they do is compress air. But there's many ways to store energy. There's an absurd amount of ways now to store, like lava rocks, for instance, and sand will hold temperatures 600-700 degrees for months. And you can unpack it on the drop of a hat and convert it. And so to suggest that the only solution is nuclear is just shocking. By Rogue Karma, probably not their real name. In 1970, Atomic Energy Commission predicted that more than 1,000 reactors would be operating in the United States by the year 2000. Imagine how many nuclear meltdowns you would have if you had 1,000 reactors across America, with all the tornadoes and all the storms and everything else. But that's what they are. They're a death cult. They worship death, right? They have no common sense. This industry is only interested in genocide. The nuclear industry is one of the biggest purveyors of misery on the entire planet. And every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms, so every year they should pick up this much, at least, 1-ton bags of radiation locally. And growing food around a nuclear power plant is the most insane thing a person can do. Well, if you look at what Japan is doing, it's hard to beat that, I suppose. They're actually growing food in the nuclear wasteland right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. And the food was banned by 55 countries and 14 prefectures, half the country, because these are the big prefectures. And now people will come in and challenge me on the weirdest stuff sometimes. I've had people say, when I say it's half the country, they'll say, no, Dan, it's not half the country. Yeah, it is half the country. And the food was banned way south, which is that way south of Tokyo, for goodness sakes. So I have to be very descriptive a lot of the times, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. The turning point was the infamous meltdown at 3 Mile Island. So if you have 1,000 reactors, you would have had... Of course, 3 Mile Island, they successfully covered it up. And at one point they acknowledged, when we have that stuff, that 2 million people got irradiated. They said it was like watching color television for an extra year. I got no concept of how they can be that evil. But one thing about media, there seems to be no limit on evil. It's perpetual, isn't it? In the aftermath of the accidents, environmentalists, people who didn't want to get sick and fucking die, pressured regulators to impose additional safety requirements on new and existing plants. No, there was a concession made in the nuclear industry. This wasn't environmentalist. Just because you're a good person and you're saying this is wrong, you don't have to label people every freaking time. To impose additional safety requirements. First off, when 3 Mile Island happened, right, John Thornburg wouldn't evacuate people for the first 4 days because he didn't want to have a panic, right? Which is what you're supposed to friggin' do. And so on almost day 4, they said pregnant women and infants and little children should evacuate, which was too little and way too late. Because a lot of people were transient back there, and they never followed people. Like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they built the cities back on bomb craters. And now they studied them like lab rats, but then they claimed there was no adverse side effects, despite the fact that if you go look at my presentations on Nagasaki, Hiroshima with academic studies, right, it's that information is being left out. And so what they done was every nuclear power plant in North America after that had to have sirens within 10 miles of the nuclear plant. And so some plants have up to 157 sirens within 10 miles of a nuclear power plant. Not that they're ever going to use it if they have an accident. They did have one a couple of years ago, and they used a siren. Then he came out and said that it was somebody accidentally pushed the buttons. But in order for the sirens to work, there's a whole bunch of things you got to do, and more than one. It takes several people to get to the point where you can turn the sirens on. So they had a nuclear accident, and that was one of the oldest reactors they have in America. It was very what they call brittle. Nuclear energy advocates argued that these regulations were mostly unnecessary. The pro-nuclear community, right, like Jim Smith from United Kingdom, they should be arrested and jailed for the rest of their natural life. And just before they die, they should be publicly executed. All they did in this telling was make plants so expensive and slow to build that utility companies turned back to coal and gas. Activists and regulators had overreacted. Activists, environmentalists, and killed Americans' best shot at a carbon-free future, free energy. I mean, the people that wrote this story, the guy who got his name on it is not smart enough to write. I looked at what the stuff he wrote. He usually talks about cats and that and brings in the audience, and then lobbyists will give him stories. He'll put his name on it and publish it and get a kickback, right? He'll probably do these stories for free, knowing piece of shit that he actually is. You can't call nuclear carbon free. It uses 2 gas, oil, and coal plants, for goodness sakes, just to build a site, to run it, and for 60 years to decommission it. It's dedicated, huge, massive power facilities. The safety risk of nuclear energy is often widely overblown. No one died at 3 Mile Island. Of course, that's simply not true. And so when you see all these keystone lies in the story, then you're, you know it's written by lobbyists, right? such disgusting people to suggest that no one died because of 3 Mile Island. We actually got cancer maps on top of it. Reports of enormous increases in cancer deaths, infant mortality rates doubles, birds disappeared, mutations observed after 3 Mile Island. A lot of people left their pets behind when they finally evacuated, and they came back. The majority of the pets had died. And they're supported by top universities' reanalysis of 3 Mile Island data on top of that. So to suggest no one, even including deadly meltdowns at Chernobyl and Fukushima, nuclear power is most likely caused only a few hundred deaths, putting a safely record. This sounds like the Breakthrough Institute, don't it? This is their typical narrative, right? With wind turbines and solar panels. So they're equating now nuclear accidents with wind turbines and solar panels. Well, they closed 9,400 farms on Ireland and Scotland, United Kingdom, because of Chernobyl, 3,000 kilometers away, right? I always get offended when I see stories like that. It's very offensive for me when I see stories suggesting that nobody got hurt. It's very offensive because there's orphanages after orphanage after orphanage around Chernobyl with abandoned is loaded with abandoned children. The influence of post-Chernobyl fallout and birth defects, abortion rates in Austria. They've done human studies, sex ratio studies on Europe, looking for more males than females, which is what they found, of course. Which means, of course, less people and less animals, less insects, less birds. Prenatal loss of 400 male fetuses in the Czech Republic. No, nobody died, Dina. Secondary sex ratio and trends in associated gender-specific births near nuclear facilities. So even like test reactors, they do sex ratio studies within 15, 20 miles of it, and they see these huge discrepancies of more males than females being born. And this quantifies radioactive poisoning. Non-thyroid cancers in northern Ukraine. Congenital abnormality registries in Belarus. Fallout from Chernobyl accident, cancer incidences in Finland. Down syndrome type clustering in Belarus. They also see, I got a study there of Scotland too, for Down syndrome clusters being after Chernobyl. Chernobyl fallout and prenatal mortality, England and Wales. They closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom. And many are still closed today, 38 years later. So I find it very offensive when people come out and lie like they do. And let me go backwards for a second. I'm not going to go through all of these. But if you want to later, it'll be there for you, right? If you really want to understand that this stuff is evil. There's no other way to describe it. This is just, if you go back and watch my Chernobyl, this year's anniversary on Chernobyl, I had like 400 studies there. You really get an idea. So these babies that are born, there's going to be some hard pictures for people to look at, but there's only a few pictures I'm going to show you out of the massive amount that I have of the Chernobyl babies. Go watch the documentary Chernobyl Hurts. Cry yourself to sleep like I've done many times. So to deny that these children exist, and thank goodness for foundations that go down and try to bring some relief to these victims. Schizophrenia. So, like, radiation is not just congenital malformations. And, like, when that's Chernobyl, for Fukushima, there's 14.2% of every 100,000 children born across the entire country, not just Fukushima Prefecture, but the entire country, that have to have open heart surgery. That's 14,200 children per 100,000. These are unbelievable numbers, by the way. There were 6 in 10 children in Fukushima Prefecture with diabetes, and they're expecting diabetes, according to the head of Tokyo Medical Clinic, in children from Fukushima radioactive fallout. 6 out of 10 children with diabetes. There's 13,646 children out of 38,000 with thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters or larger. And a child's thyroid is typically like 2 by 4 centimeters. So you get thyroid tumors half the size, or the width of their thyroids, which also means they're producing radioactive hormones, and which of course now means they got enough. If they got enough radiation to do that, then their bones are saturated, their skeleton with beta, at least, and which means they're mutating their stem cells. So imagine what's going on with the insects and the birds and the mammals and the animals and everything else. They say air pollution from fossil fuel, meanwhile, is estimated to kill anywhere from 5 million to 9 million people every year. And that was a fake study, and produced by Our World in Data, which is the industry, right? And then you can cite this article and reuse our work freely, he says. But see, the original study was James Hansen in 1979, was it? Let me find that. It's been a while since we brought up that piece of shit. There you go. And this was widely cited until that other study showed up out of the blue, which is associated. So Hansen's study, and they had done the statistics, and you can go read it up on his Wikipedia page on their proposed solutions, examines the mortality rate per unit electrical power produced from fossil fuels, coal and natural gas, as well as nuclear power. It was estimated 1.8 million air pollution caused deaths were prevented between 1971 and 2009 through the use of nuclear power instead of fossil fuel. What did I say? He said 1971. I can't remember what I said. Okay. It is estimated 1.8 million air pollution caused deaths were prevented by using nuclear, which is 64,000 a year. Not 6.4 million a year, but 64,000 a year. Not 6.4285 million a year, but 64,285 a year. Right? Cite this article. And I got a whole folder now. When that article came out, there was all the media came screaming out. Ah! Doing my jazz hands here. Data review how many people died from air pollution. Meanwhile, it's estimated to kill anywhere from 5 million to 9 million people every year, give or take a couple of 100 million. Like, this is nonsense. Fukushima is killing 5 to 9 million people each year post-Fukushima. Right? These numbers, like the numbers that they done was 1971 to 2009, and they show up with numbers that don't exist. Their numbers don't exist, see? Oh, according to Jessica Lovering, this is a disgusting parasite. This is the Breakthrough Institute, right? And I remember her when she first came out with her company, Good Energy Collective. She's the executive director. But in reality, she's just another monster, right? And she was with the Breakthrough Institute for a very long time. And we covered her a week ago, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, rather, or something, where she was saying it was like a banana and a potato chip and walked in sunshine routine. Just a disgusting example of a human. Yeah, used to be the head of nuclear policy at the Breakthrough Institute, with the which was started off with Michael Schellenberg and the other piece of shit that's still there. That tends to warn against excessive regulations against nuclear. Oh, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. If you have renewables across your country, the wind is always blowing in the next town, or the town over there, or the next town over there. Just because it's not blowing in this town don't mean it's not blowing in the next town. And so it's easy to transmit the power. Nikola Tesla came up with that invention a very long time ago, didn't he? Why would you quote battery storage when there's unbelievable amount of solutions out there, and they quote battery storage? And so people like that, I'm not going to say what I want to say because we're on ShitTube, but these are best described as monsters. People who use that particular narrative, these are cowards. And whoever got their name on a story is obviously not the person that wrote the story. This is obviously written by Jessica, most likely. Right, once you reach a certain level in nuclear industry, so-called fame, and there's Dick Thornburg from with the black glasses on from 3 Mile Island. He was only the governor for a short period of time. He refused to evacuate people. He didn't want to cause panic, he said. Where the hell is that? I think that's it there. He didn't want to create a panic, so he wouldn't tell people to evacuate from a nuclear meltdown. Okay, hang on. So we're looking for renewable storage solutions, right? I got a couple. The geothermal obviously is the best way to go. There's so many different ways. It blows me away how many storage solutions, and they're going to use the word batteries. It's just surreal, isn't it? The sun always shines, or the wind always blows. Why would you use anything but geothermal is the first question. And Renault, the big car manufacturing, going to dig down 4,000 meters for 40 megawatts continuously. 40 megawatts. It's enough for 40,000 homes. And every community can do it. Solar and wind compensate for the decline of hydro and nuclear in the EU electricity output. But for storage, you pump hydro, where you build 2 reservoirs, you pump water up to one with excess energy, or you just have them dedicated to pump up there. And when the sun is not shining, the wind's not blowing, water comes down to the lower one, right? And you don't need to use seawater. You just use what they call the water batteries, where you make 2 reservoirs. And you don't have to build anything exotic like they've done in the United Kingdom, right, to denigrate it. Even though it's working fine for many decades now. And compressed air energy storage, I love this one. Like $60 million on it or something, that one. $54 million. And all they're doing, they got windmills that's what they do. They just compress air. And they dig mine shafts. But there's many ways to compress air, right? And then you can, because you create a lot of heat when you're compressing air. Do you remember diving? We had big tanks on the boat, and you would put your tanks down, your dive tanks in the water tanks to keep them cool as they were compressing air, right? Because we were using the 5,500 pounder, the 5,500 pounds per square inch tanks. I spent years diving with the hookah system, where you had a 1,000-foot air hose, and they just pump air down to you constantly. But that's nerve-wracking, because when the compressor breaks down, or you run out of air. It's no fun at all, right? And trying to turn the tank on is always a disaster. Sometimes we used to dive with the suicide packs on with no tank on your back whatsoever, just the air hose right to your regulator. So what it meant, though, was you use less weight to stay down and work, and you just had to bail out whenever the... A lot of times I would bring a spare tank with me in the bag. So if I did have to do something, I can just turn the tank on, stick the regulator in my mouth. But, normally I'm wearing a Pegasus, a full face. That didn't stop me from eating seafood all day, every day on the ocean floor, though. I used to eat around 20 sea urchins every single day. Because you want sweet urchins for the nipperheads in Japan. And so we crack open the urchin before you start picking them to make sure they were healthy. Because we just only picked a 3-inch, right? And they're big carpets. And you only can pick a little bit out of each area, right? 10, 15,000 pounds. And you're only going to pick the 3-inch because that's all the Japs want it. So anyway, compressed air, you pump your compressed air down into caverns at 120 psi, and you store the heat, right, that you're generating in lava rocks or in sand and stuff like that. And then when you want to unpack the compressed air to make it expand quicker, you had that heat there already. You didn't have to burn fuel or something to create the heat to unpack it quicker. So there's many hydro star plant at a 400 megawatt, 3,200 megawatt compressed air energy storage in the United States. The biggest one they got there now is 10 gigawatts that they're building, right? $50-year life system, probably lasts a lot longer than that. No toxic materials, emission-free, and rotational inertia and supported grid stability. 400 megawatts electricity for 8 hours. 400,000 homes for 8 hours. Oh, they can't do it. They got to have batteries, Dana. Oh, I see. Rondo's mission is to help the world's most energy-intensive industry rapidly reach zero carbon. You can't reach zero carbon. We only got 0.4% carbon as it is now in the atmosphere. It gets any lower, and that plants can't grow. At lower cost than fossil fuel. Let's play that clip because I get a kick out of... you'll hear somebody say, what's your favorite number? And they all start guessing like random numbers. Oh, I think it's 5%. We're in charge of it, so we know it's important. But I don't really know what it is. Yeah, that's a tough question. You're a sneaky little bugger, you asking tough questions on a Monday. What percentage of our atmosphere is CO2, was it? It's giggity. Just hang on, I gotta adjust the volume. And away we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What percent of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What percent of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess, it's okay.
I'll buy 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreher.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
This Price is Right.
8. I'm going to hit the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. I heard a couple of you on the panel saying you're looking to change your vehicles to electric, even though we don't have the electric grid. And me as a farmer, I wouldn't be real happy about running out and replacing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment because someone wants it to be electric. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not a half of a percent. It's 0.04%, and it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off.
That was quite interesting. Like, just watch them, watch the confused look on them. And you know what happens when people get really confused? They'll start to giggle. It's an involuntary reaction, right? They're embarrassed, right?
Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What percent of our atmosphere is CO2,
See the
carbon
guy in the
dioxide?
blue tie? Wait, now watch this again.
Well,
Question.
what percent of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess. It's
Like, that should be a question that makes common sense. He's very clear, actually, isn't he?
okay.
I'll bite 5%.
And there's this confusion. Like, nobody knows what to say. I'll bite 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
Look at the nervous laugh right behind him. And even the two women here on the end, two creatures. And the lady in the second row back there.
We'll go 7.
Like, she playing with her hair.
That's my favorite number.
What's my favorite number?
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number. We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that
I'll see her. The poker game. They're in charge. They're the ones who are in charge.
transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on.
Look, she literally, she's the time that, like, if her car needed oil or water, she'd go up and put it in where the oil's to, right?
Energy transition.
All right. So
Stupid. It's embarrassing. And it's on video. It's 0.04%. If it gets any lower than 0.02, plants can't grow. You can't breathe. There won't be enough oxygen for you to breathe if it gets to 0.02. You don't want to be any carbon capturing whatsoever. You need more carbon. Nuclear is destroying it, see? It bonds with it and then gets washed out and sequestered in the forest until we have a forest fire and is liberated back into the ecosystem as radioactive carbon. Rondo will eliminate 15% of the global CO2 emissions in 15 years. There's another one. And comparable with 90% of the industrial processes and power needs. Rondo. A Rondo heat battery. So this is where they're using, I believe they're like using volcanic rock or something like that to store energy. Bugs to boost solar energy storage underground in soil batteries. No project. Soil batteries. So the idea is to stimulate particular microorganisms in the soil by using buried electrodes to receive electricity from solar panels. So why was the Breakthrough Institute talking about batteries? Because they don't want solutions. They only want nuclear, right? They're a think tank that shouldn't exist. Their entire legacy is to sabotage humanity. And how to store excess wind power underwater. There's another way to store energy. You can store wind power underwater. 19 new wind farm projects planned for Scotland. The UK offshore wind power capacity is set to be more than double. What happens when it's not blowing? Turbines are cranking out electricity and there's no demand for it, rather. 2020, enough electricity to supply more than 1 million homes was wasted due to a lack of storage. One firm won a 2022 Best of Innovation Awards at the CES, Consumer Electronics Show, Technologies. This year believes it has the solution. Dutch startup Ocean Grazer developed the Ocean Battery, which stores energy below the wind farm. When there's excess electricity, the system pumps water from an underground reservoir into a tote flexible bladder that sits on the seabed. You can think of like a big bicycle inner tube. So you see those black inner tubes up there? Holds water under pressure, and the water in those tubes is under pressure, so when it's released, the water flows quickly and is directed through the turbines, also on the seabed, generating electricity when needed. It's effectively based on the same technology as a hydro storage, where water is pumped back through a dam and a river that we have transformed into something you can deploy on the seabed. That's pretty brilliant, actually, isn't it? And a prototype designed for deep water has already been tested at the port in the Netherlands. And preparing tests on the second system has been modified for shallower water in a lake in northern Netherlands. It should be operational next year, which is this year, I believe. Yeah, I haven't got the date of that story. Many onshore wind farms are already using batteries to store extra power. I showed you there's many other solutions. Why would you use batteries? It's literally the stupidest one you could use when you have all these, like, the volcanic rock can store heat at 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures for a month or more. With enough advances in battery storage technology, so why were they using that connotation, right? Nuclear can generate the same amount of power while you use 1/30 as much land as solar. And we hear that the stupidest argument all the time. And about 1/200 as much as wind. Well, geothermal beats them all. Right? Geothermal beats them all. Which is why we got a poll tonight talking about geothermal. Should geothermal... Holy shit, we got 20 people on our show. I don't know what to do now. There's too many people. I'm confused. Should geothermal that actually exists replace small modular reactors that don't exist in conversations about nuclear disease factories? Indeed, Mr. D. Reactors can be built anywhere, not just in areas with lots of natural wind and sunshine. So then why did nuclear go backwards 1.7 gigawatts last year and renewables advanced 507 gigawatts in a 12-month period? Because nuclear is stupid. Nuclear plants happen to generate the greatest numbers of high-paying jobs of any. Yeah, they got to spend $100 million a year on maintenance on these disease factories. All nuclear plants, except for a few, are surrounded by farms, and all nuclear plants are hemorrhaging radiation into the ecosystem in a catastrophic amount. Betting on the future of atomic power requires a leap of faith, but Americans may have to take that leap because the alternative is so much worse. The alternative is geothermal and compressed air storage and water batteries and just wonderful stuff. Nuclear is the stupidest. It's already been proven stupid for 80 years. Why should we give it another breath of air? If you took 1/100th of the money that you're investing in nuclear fission or nuclear and put it into resolving any issues with geothermal, you know, the problem with the geothermal is they can dig down 10 kilometers, but they need to go another 2 to get to 1,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures 24 hours a day for 1 million years, right? And so they don't. There is technology showing up this year, and they're using the same drill technique as they do for oil wells, as you use for geothermal. So geothermal should be everywhere because oil wells are everywhere, right? And the problem is once you get down so deep, it's so hot that the tips will break easily. They'll become fragile because of the heat or something, right? And then it's difficult to pull them out and get a new tip on it and keep digging through this hard layer, the last mile or something. And so one of the techniques, there's a couple. One of the techniques was They're going to use 25,000 pounds per square inch water jets to slice the rocks. And then they're going to use 10,000 pound pneumatic hammers in the same system to pound the sliced rocks into small particles. And then use the drill bit to go down through that and repeat it all the way down to the last mile. And when they hit temperatures of 1,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, which is hotter than nuclear, gas, oil, coal, right? But every community can build a geothermal. You don't need to go that deep. But that's the ultimate deep, where you can replace all gas, oil, coal, and nuclear plants with geothermal. And why wouldn't you? Why would you look at anything else? Why would you even look at batteries when you have geothermal? Because these, like the Breakthrough Institute and groups like that, will sabotage everybody's future so they can get a paycheck. They destroy humanity and the 8 million species so they can get their paychecks. And so who funded this was the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. So that's a little boo item. With assets of $14 billion. And the originals, they're dead now. So the industry now has gobbled up that, and they're using their foundation to fund disgusting things. The following is a list of the 30 top grantees as recorded by their publications. And the Brookings Institute gets $16.7 million. A think tank who does nothing but tell you how not to have a future in your countries makes $16.7 million. $16.7 million is a big enough incentive to be evil, okay? It really is. And when you start looking at, they also fund the United Nations Foundation. So, and the despicable MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, these are scumbags. These are real life scumbags, though, all of these. So you have wealthy people, and they leave their money to do something good with it. They die. The industry takes over the foundation. I know of at least 100 foundations like this where the industries have taken it over, and they use the money to fund nothing but evil. They're always out there looking for these foundations. Technology for slash and nuclear power plant waste wins a Swiss backing. This is the technology doesn't exist. This is simply another way to steal money or to manipulate people into thinking that the industry has it under control, right? It's like the Alps water system. There is no Alps water filtration system in Fukushima. It's meant to do exactly as this story, where they manipulate you and get you. The nuclear transmutation has endorsed a long sought-after technology. Y'all say the technology doesn't exist. They're going to use a particle accelerator for nuclear transmutation. This is the narrative they're using. They don't have any evidence this will actually work. This is a hypothetical, right? To dramatically reduce the amount of radioactive waste from atomic power plants. And like we covered a story last week about United Kingdom, where 98% of the waste that was designated for deep geological repository was being recycled. Nuclear waste was being recirculated back into the ecosystem because of some new blood they brought in from a university that was gung-ho. And they're like, oh, well, he's in charge. Let him do whatever he wants. Really, it is disturbing. That could cut, this is a conjecture, right, of highly radioactive waste by 80%. Storing highly radioactive material for hundreds of thousands of years has always been a huge, expensive problem for the nuclear industry. What are you talking about? They're not storing anything. They haven't even tried. The problem with the nuclear waste, which they don't tell everybody, the high-level waste, is splitting atoms. And if you don't contain it, then that's released into the ecosystem. All their nuclear waste currently is vented. Everything. It's vented because it's splitting atoms and you can't contain it. Expensive. A problem. This is a disaster. The industry is the worst humans imaginable. With more than 20 countries, U.S., France, United Kingdom, South Korea, agreed on the United Nations Constipated Party 28 climate negotiations last year to triple nuclear energy by 2050. There is currently no long-term storage sites in operation. Oh, well, nice of you to finally admit it. Finland is building the world's first such facility, which it says will safely guard waste for 100,000 years. But, like, first off, it's not. You can't safely guard the waste. You're putting it down there and running away, so it's going to melt down. You're not going to deal with it. You're going to put down there, you're going to pretend you're going to block it in, you're going to have absorptions there. It'll cannibalize that and atomize and aerosol and ionize and radiate it at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures in the blink of an eye. That's the big problem, and they know it. Refuse to acknowledge the problem. 80 years of passing it on to the next generation, and we're basically the last generation now. Transmutex is trying to solve the problem we have had for a long while in nuclear, which is not safety, actually, but waste. What do you mean it's not safety? This person lies an awful lot anyway. Whoever the lobbyist was that wrote this for that media, which is probably Jessica Loving, right? Said Albert Wenger, an investor at the Union Square Ventures, which is financing the startup. They're financing it because the government is going to pay for it. Reinventing alchemy. First off, it simply doesn't work that way. You can't, you can't grow plants to produce gold, okay? Because you're talking about a mineral. So, that's the problem with it. You can't chemically. So, there's a lot of pharmaceuticals that are plants. You grow certain plants, you can extract a large amount of calcium out of it, for instance, or whatever, right? Because you can. There's all these different techniques, but you can't produce gold. You can't produce silver in a plant. Otherwise, there'd be an endless supply of gold and silver, right? So, and you can't do the same thing by transmutating radiation. What they're talking about is reducing it from being dangerous from 1 million years to 500 years. And they can't quantify the assertion. Now, they're talking about a particle accelerator. And they're going to pair it up with a nuclear reactor. These are monsters. There's no end to, if it's extremely evil, they'll get all the money they need to be it. The idea of using the technique for managing nuclear waste has been a subject of interest for decades. Transmutation. They're still using the same theory for fusion from 1904, 120 years ago. They haven't come up with anything new on their own in 120 years for fusion. And they haven't come up with anything new here. Nuclear Energy Agency of the Intergovernmental OECD. There are 34 countries, I think it is. Yeah, 34 countries of Europe, North America, Asia Pacific. And therefore, you're taking a country, you're using resources of a country with the consent of the people in the country to carry out evil that is generational and affects the 8 million species dramatically and is catastrophic. Transmutate proposes to use a particle accelerator coupled to a nuclear reactor. So they're going to use it. So this is just a scam so they can work on some other equations, right? This is not meant to get rid of the nuclear waste. This is meant to get a cheap particle accelerator and an endless supply of electricity. And because the one that they have, the Inter, right? That the energy that thing used was horrifying. This industry is just full of. It's just a big scam industry, isn't it? Coupled to a reactor to combine subatomic neutron particles with thorium. So they're going to combine them with thorium, a slightly radioactive metal, that produces a uranium isotope that then fissions and releases energy to power their particle accelerator. If it can be demonstrated to work, it doesn't, like, it's not going to work. But yet when you read the headline, you're like, I want 2 of them tomorrow morning for slashing nuclear power plant waste wins. If it can be demonstrated to work, well, it can't. We heard that over and over and over, and these never come to fruition. It's just their way of getting free funding, right? And make these outlandish promises that they have a solution when they know absolutely true. Honestly, they don't. You're able to reduce the level of radioactivity produced by burning up some of the long-lived isotopes, but they're not going to burn up the plutonium. They're not going to be burning up the curium isotope, which is the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods. Produced in your reactors, and you get energy out at the same time. They're using a particle accelerator to use that for their own, to make enormous, outlandish wages, instead of coming up with actual solutions. The first technology has been taken seriously by a nuclear waste agency to reduce the amount of nuclear waste, and it could be used on 99% of the world's nuclear waste, and reduce the time it takes to remain radioactive to less than 500 years. So, like, there's no lie they won't tell you. There really isn't. That's all they do, actually, is lie. You can guarantee waterproof storage for 1,000 years, he said. They just say whatever they feel like it, whatever feel-good moment they're having. Yeah, the process also reduces the volume by 80%. To believe anything these people tell you is you'll regret it. That the idea behind the process has been conceived by good old shithead himself, Carlo Rubbia, the former Director General of the CERN Particle Physics Laboratory, a known piece of shit, or a notorious piece of shit. The potential obstacle to the viability of the transmutation is the cost, and the price of building a reactor with a particle accelerator. CERN cost, he said, $4.75 billion. The study undertaken by the companies. Yeah, the company will tell you anything. Like, look what Nutec has done, which we're going to get to Nutec soon. Switzerland voted in 2017 referendum not to replace its existing 4 nuclear reactors, so they came up with another way to get one. Right? That's all they're doing. And make everybody sick in the meantime. So Korea's Doosan Enerbility to supply small modular reactor parts to, wait for it, Nuscale. Because Nuscale is a government, right? We got some good stuff on Nuscale tonight. The deal is part of the Nuscale contract to build multi-billion-dollar 24 small modular reactors for Standard Power. And this is their steel production site in South Korea. South Korea Power Plant Engineering Company is slated to supply nuclear reactor equipment in Nuscale, a U.S.-based small modular reactor design firm. What are you talking about? They haven't designed anything. They actually don't have a full application into any regulatory agency that I know of. Nuscale, the world's largest company in nuclear fission technology provider. They don't provide nuclear fission technology. What are you talking about? Why don't you just lie to everybody? Oh, that's right. That's what you're already done. You constantly do. Is in the final stage of a multi-billion-dollar deal to supply 24 small modular reactors to Standard Power, a U.S. information technology infrastructure firm. So Nuscale Power Corporation, because the media is going to lie to you. You know Wikipedia is going to lie to you, but what you're going to read on Wikipedia will be half true because they're on the stock exchange, right? So they got to be careful of their lies there. Had agreements to build reactors in Idaho by 2030, but was canceled in 2023 due to the cost going from $3.6 billion to $9.3 billion. Which is actually the estimates, because we covered that when it happened, when they canceled, when they got canceled. It was actually going to be over $20 billion for 460 megawatt powers. This is absurd numbers we're talking about. And geothermal, you could have built 5 times that energy, and you would have had it up and running quite a few years ago. And the money they stole is shocking. We got some of that coming up. It was founded and based on research funded by the Department of Energy, United States, and conducted by a team of degenerate scientists at Oregon State University, the scums, and the Idaho National Laboratory, the degenerates, beginning in 2000. So they actually been around for 24 years, not 18 like I've been saying, right? Apologize. Department of Energy funded the research in 2002 to 2003. But it's really interesting coming up. In 2011, Nuscale's largest investor, Kenwood Group, was investigated by U.S. Securities Exchange Commission and pleaded guilty to operating a Ponzi scheme. So they were a Ponzi scheme until 2011. A confirmed Ponzi scheme. Now, I've been calling them a Ponzi scheme for years, right? Which is probably why we probably covered that a number of times. I just can't remember it. But they were actually convicted of a Ponzi scheme in 2011. They try to push it over on the investor, but it's them, right? In October, Flora, which is one of the oldest and biggest companies out there, corporation, they're the major monsters at Hanford, right? Acquired a majority interest in the company for $3.5 million, promised $30 million in working capital. Their investment saved the company. So in 2012, Rolls-Royce said it would support Nuscale's commercialization efforts from the United Kingdom and hoped to obtain funding from the Department of Energy, United States, from opportunity announcements. In December 2012, the co-founder was replaced by Hopkins from the CEO. Now, we covered him quite a few times. It was not funded in the first Department of Energy rounds, but in the second rounds in December 2013, they got $226 million. Unbelievable. With no product after all them years. To share the expenses of obtaining government approval through the Licensing Technology Support Program, and which, of course, the government, the Department of Energy, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission got to hire hundreds of people to go through their applications, right? So they needed to get paid, and they needed a license to look like it was going to make its way through for the new Ponzi scheme to work. This was followed by an agreement in May 2014 for up to $217 million in funding over a 5-year period, where the Department of Energy would match private funding. Well, how very nice of them. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Energy reported it provided more than $400 million since 2014 to support Nuscale. And 2022 launched as a public company on the stock exchange, where the Flora Corporation reported invested $600 million in Nuscale since 2011. And that Nuscale was expected to go public in 2022, with Flora owning 60% of the stock. That's a Ponzi scheme, clear as day. In May 2022, Nuscale completed a merger with the Special Purpose Acquisition Company, SPAC. Spring Valley Acquisition Corporation raised $380 million of investments, and Nuscale Power Corporation then listed on the New York Stock Exchange, where it robbed every investor that invested in them. Like a really good little Ponzi scheme. Carbon-free power project in Idaho, who are suing them now, of course. 12 reactors would produce 570 megawatts at a cost of under $3 billion in 2020. And the Department of Energy approved $1.355 billion. We covered all of this when it happened, by the way. And then they didn't even try to build a reactor. They didn't even buy land. They didn't even hire the people to do it. They simply just stole 90% of the money through administration. And one of the worst Ponzi schemes, one of the many Ponzi schemes we see in the nuclear industry. Everything in the nuclear industry is a Ponzi scheme. Every single one of them. Portland nuclear power startup Nuscale hit with investor lawsuit. And this is the picture they were putting out there, and sleek and shiny, and You got to invest in it. We're on the stock market with no product. And their previous company that they were paired up with convicted of a Ponzi scheme, and they end up on the stock market. It's unbelievable. Unless you know the nuclear industry, I guess. In 2023, Nuscale executives told investors progress acquiring the needed customer base was looking good. We're continuing making progress when they never done anything. The research published in October by Iceberg Research, a short-selling firm specializing in revealing substantial earning misrepresentations and accounting irregularities, contradicted that narrative, claiming no new customers agreed to buy the disease factory since March. Ponzi scheme, right? And they're the government, too. They're funded by the government, but they're officially not the government. But they're all government, right? And Nuscale stocks fell 60% since August last year. And they bought up their own stocks. Now they got another Ponzi scheme now with South Korea, right? Oh, no, South Korea's going to do it, Dan. Give your fucking head a shake. When it falls off, give it a kick. Can nuclear power out of short seller turbulence? No, they're talking about Nuscale. Further, Iceberg has termed Nuscale deal to supply 24 units of 77 megawatt modulars to crypto data service company Standard Power a pipe dream. All of these reactors have to be buried in water, by the way, permanently. They're surrounded by water. And you have to change the fuel every 2 years, right? Requires refueling, the very top page, the very top sentence, the end of it, with refueling, require refueling with standard 5% low enriched uranium, which is pretty high enriched, really, 235 every 2 years. By the way, this is mixed oxide. So these small modular reactors, in studies, say they're going to produce 35% more intermediate level waste, which is incredibly dangerous. But when you compare it to high level waste, it's not so bad, they say, right? But it's actually, if you got a liter of that stuff in your house, you're going to die from it in about 20 minutes. 30% more high level waste, and then 5 times more fuel rods, because there's no economy of scale, right? And the reactor is designed to shut down, cool itself indefinitely during most accidents. So how many kind of accidents can it have, I wonder? All of them, Dana. But it can't cool itself indefinitely. You're talking about if it melts down, it burns at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. You got any friggin' idea how much water it needs to meet the word indefinitely? Pipe dream. It's a planet killer. That's what these things are. And the more you build, the more you're going to have melting down. Require refueling with standard 4.9% low enriched uranium-235. Like uranium-235 is high grade, is nasty isotopes, right? 5% of uranium-235, my goodness. New scientists report a peer-reviewed analyst from the Stanford University that assessed nuclear waste production from small modular reactors included the small modular reactor performed worst on nearly all of our metrics compared to standard commercial reactors. And safety concerns. In March of 2020, a panel of independent experts from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission on reactor safeguards claimed to find reactor design flaws. The main issue was that in the event of emergency shutdown, condensed steam returning to the reactor vessel would be low in boron and might not absorb enough neutrons, which means they're going to melt down. Going to have a criticality. Nuscale modified its design, but they don't have any test reactor to prove their assertions, right? To ensure that more boron would spread to the returning water. But the ACRS, which is the NRC's Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards, was concerned that operators could accidentally add deborated water to the core. And the panel found other problems. The steam generators could be prone to damaging vibrations. And I remember all that because we covered all that originally. Nuscale, though, has offices in Portland, in Oregon, in Corvallis, in Oregon, in Charlotte, in North Carolina, in Rockville, in Maryland, Its headquarters in Portland. Its factory that doesn't do nothing is in Corvallis. And it maintains a test facility at the Oregon State University and Italy. But it's publicly traded as a small modular reactor in the New York Stock Exchange with no product. Why, so they trick people into investing in it with all this hype, but the people ultimately are going to lose their money. And the South Korean announcement that they're going to supply parts to Nuscale, their stocks went up, which are people are going to lose their monies. The world's largest small modular reactor design company. It's the world's largest, but it ain't produced nothing. It's a worthless company, right? And I've had contact with them over the years. These are fucking degenerates. These are absolutely disgusting degenerates. I've talked with these degenerates. They call me up and harass me on the phone. These are scumbags. And nuclear fission technology provider. They don't provide any nuclear technology fission whatsoever. Nothing. Not a fucking thing. So stop saying it, you scumbags. In 2019, South Korea invested $44 million in a company. In 2021, the South Korean company poured an additional $60 million and secured a right to build core small modular reactor equipment for the U.S. government. Based in Oregon, Nuscale powers the world's leading small modular reactor technology company. So if they're the leaders, then the other companies, they got nothing. They got a fake design, a mock design they put together. And look at this, they got the big chunks of cement and then they got cables to stop it from tipping over. Just like that's literally one of the stupidest pictures you can imagine. This is the stupidest picture imaginable. It cracks me up every time I see these pictures. That's the closest they're going to get to a reactor. They're stealing 90% of the money through administration. They're never going to come up with a product. The whole idea, it's a Ponzi scheme, and they got convicted in 2011 of a Ponzi scheme, the company that they were paired up with. And the number of small modular reactor developers has also grown rapidly to 98. There's almost 100 as of April this year, from 42 in March of 2023. So 56 new companies since March of 2023. All of them got different designs. They're all jumped on the money wagon, right? Competition to take the lead in small modular reactors market is intensifying with Nuscale power at the forefront, followed by TerraPower, Bill Gates, X-Energy, General Electric, Hitachi, Nuclear Energy, and Holtec. Chris Singh, who should be in jail for the rest of his natural life. And Bill Gates, they're going to replace a coal plant. They only said that because Quasi Electric was going to do it with geothermal, and Bill Gates like, we can't have that. We got to do it. Not do it, but we got to go and pretend we're doing it. GS Energy, Samsung, C&T have invested $40 million and $70 million in Nuscale. They're getting money tossed at them from everybody, aren't they? They still can't fucking produce nothing. They're still no closer. So there must be very influential people that are working there, and the industry has to throw money at them to play the game, right? They got everybody throwing money at them. We still haven't produced anything. They're not even trying. And built anything, not trying. Its energy and battery affiliate, SK Innovation Company, and Korean Hydro Nuclear Power, they've had some serious releases. Joined hands with TerraPower, Bill Gates, a U.S. small modular. We covered all that when that happened. Founded by, he didn't found it. He didn't. Like Bill Gates didn't found his company. They brought him in. They've been using Bill Gates' names for years in the nuclear industry, to say, because he says he likes nuclear power. Because they don't have a single person in the nuclear industry that the world can recognize. Right? There's nobody there with charisma or with charm. There really isn't. They invested $250 million in TerraPower to venture into the small modular reactor business. You just give him the devil his due. That's all that was. And HD Korea Shipbuilding Offshore Engineering invested $30 million in TerraPower, and as part of its push to develop. Like, if you start building all these small modular reactors all over the fucking world with all these different designs, you're going to have so many meltdowns. You might not have a future as it is because of Fukushima and 80 years of nuclear and all the nuclear dumping in the oceans you've done and everything else. But to start producing these fucking stupid little things, I'm very disappointed. Wildfires closed 20 miles of highways across Hanford nuclear site. 20 miles. So Hanford is 585 square miles. And in the 50s and 60s, dumped 450 billion gallons of very, 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 very high-level nuclear sludge into the soil, which is everything downhill to the Columbian River, which feeds tens of thousands of farms and millions of people downstream. So 450 billion, of course, that just doesn't register for people for some reason. If you do the math on it, though, it's an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet more than once, of very, 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 very high-level nuclear waste. And it's equal to 1.4 million of the 300,000 plus gallon tanks, where they have 177 tanks there right now that they say they're trying to, what they're going to do is they're going to evaporate the liquid that's there, which means you're going to release insidious amounts of radiation into the ecosystem. And then the hard sludge left over, they're going to encase it in glass and store it in a repository. And the facility they built, the glass, what they call it, like a glassification facility. Once you turn it on, you can never go inside the building again. And the problem with that, of course, is everything breaks and you can't fix it. And now, how do you decommission a building like this on top of that? And first off, glass is not going to protect you any better than steel or anything else or cement would, because the Wigner effect is going to break down, the neutron bombardment is going to break down the integrity of whatever material you're using anyway. And glass is probably the least desirable. So Hanford, if you worked there for 8 hours anytime in the last 80, 90 years, you're entitled to a pension. You don't have to prove you got sick by working there. You just got to prove, you don't even have to prove in many ways that you worked there. You got to give a vague proof that you worked there. And you're entitled to a payout, a pension, and health care if you worked there for a lousy 8 hours. So when you have a wildfire at a site like that, remember, that's not 585 miles of buildings. It's 585 miles of contamination. So when you have a wildfire, a massive one, that's a radioactive plume. That's a massive radioactive plume we're talking about. So anybody in around Hanford within 1,000 miles of it needs to pay attention to the wind. Nuclear reservation. Closed to the public in Hanford Reach nuclear monument land, including Rattlesnake Mountain, are closed to the public. It's the craziest industry I've ever come across. New nuclear medical research facility opens its doors in Africa. Disease factory. Oh, there's another one that's going to use the Steve Bilko nuclear medicine research. So you're going to use radiation to kill people over there and accelerate it by using this facility. It's I can show you for the next hours studies on radiation injuries from using radiation on people. So you might get rid of a tumor, but you create 6 more tumors that shows up over the next weeks and months and years. 3% of the people in Australia and 2.3% in the United States live longer than 5 years with chemo radiation therapy. And so the studies were repeated, and they said it was better off not to do it because you have a better quality of life. Because you're guaranteed that 98% or 97% will die within 5 years. The U.S. has lost 3 if you use the radiation routine. This is why I'm so upset with this industry. The U.S. has lost 3 nuclear bombs, possibly 6. And there's a map of where they lost them. The Philippines, North Atlantic. Some of these were huge megaton bombs. 3 have happened at sea. There's a lot more than that, of course, the so-called broken arrows. This is Nagasaki. And, like that's Nagasaki radiation coming up near. But think about the Soviets' biggest bomb was equal to 3,800 of these going off at the same time. So multiply that by 3,800. That's a nuclear war many times over on its own, a single bomb, right? One of the planes, the B-47 bomber, carried a 3.8 megaton. A 3.8 megaton, my God, boy. A 3.8 megaton, they lost that in the ocean. 190 times more powerful than the plutonium bomb of Nagasaki. So it's equivalent to losing 190 of these in the ocean. Get it? In 1965, on the other side of the world, in the middle of the Vietnam War, during the Vietnam War, they had jet fighters flying around with nuclear weapons on them, folks. That's unbelievable. This industry is such a disgusting industry. Lost another nuclear weapon. When it was landing on the deck, the plane rolled off the deck. It was supposed to go to the elevator. The plane, the nuclear weapon, Lieutenant Webster, fell over the side of the ship. Were never seen again. And 3 years later, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear attack submarine, was lost to the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, 400 miles southwest of the Azores. And all 99 of the sub's crew perished. And a pair of nuclear-tipped torpedoes was lost to the sea. And the Russians have been dumping the radioactive waste from their nuclear submarines in the Arctic for decades. So is the Americans, so is the British. The British done it for 36 years. Just they're bombing around, throwing 45-gallon drums of nuclear waste over the side, and as they fall to the bottom, they crush. Because every atmosphere is about 14.5 pounds, right? These are not the only incidences. In March 1956, the B-47 bomber was thought to have crashed into the Mediterranean Sea. The exact weapons it was carrying have never been disclosed, but typically carried the same nuclear bombs as lost off the coast of Georgia 2 years later. And in North Carolina, near the city of Goldsboro, there's probably a nuclear bomb buried in a field. And in 1986, the Soviet submarine K-219 sank off the coast of Bermuda. It is believed to have been carrying up to 30 nuclear warheads. Or 40 or 50, nobody knows for sure. One thing we know, they're going to lie. That's a given. Russia's radioactive submarines remain a toxic Arctic threat. This is an Andreev Bay storage facility for nuclear spent fuel and radioactive waste, the largest one in Europe. On the western shores, on the shoreline of the Kola Peninsula. The Russian Arctic stands to remain one of the most contaminated places on the planet from old Soviet nuclear submarine bases and maintenance yards on shore to discharge reactors, radioactive waste, in some cases entire nuclear submarines that were intentionally scuttled at sea. Entire nuclear submarines that were stuffed with reactor fuel, you meant to say, and scuttled at sea on purpose, sank. In fact, what they done was some of them, they had to hit them with artillery to get them to sink. Don't worry, though. It's good for 1,000 years before any radiation gets out there, you know? I got studies where they say that, right? Following the fall of the Soviet Union, a consortium of Western governments pitched in to help decontaminate the remains of the once feared Soviet nuclear submarine fleet. Throughout the late 1990s, early 2000s, a total of 198 rusted out and derelict nuclear subs loaded with spent uranium were dismantled through bilateral funding agreements and scientific exchanges with European countries. Can you imagine the pollution was released from that, folks? And some of them would have melted down. There's 160 of the nuclear subs up in Russia's far north that are derelict and rusted out and ran up on beaches, and they don't know how to decommission them. Like when they say they safely done it, 198. Remember, they got 19 subs in the United Kingdom. They don't know how to defuel. So how come they can defuel 198 rusted out derelicts of the Soviets, but they can't defuel the 19 reactor submarines they got in United Kingdom? These people are disgusting maggots in our society. And we've covered Andreevia Bay, former submarine maintenance. Like the stories, they got outdoor fuel pools that have been abandoned for decades, full of nuclear waste. Nuclear fuel rods, assemblies from submarine reactors. The bottom of these places are sludges of nuclear fuel. Today, right? They still can't clean that up. Northwest of Murmansk, near the Norwegian border, which is where they got 160 Russian subs ran up on the beaches. Throughout his career as a refueling port, the site amassed some 22,000 spent nuclear fuel assemblies from more than 100 submarines, much of which are stored in rusty containers in the open air. These shoddy conditions became horrifyingly to the light in 1982 when 600,000 metric tons of radioactive water leaked. So 600,000 tons is not a leak. Like, look up the word leak. A leak is a way for a fluid to escape. 600,000 tons. 600,000 metric tons. Let's do some math here, maybe. 600,000 metric tons. What do we got done here? Hang on. $600,000 metric tons. Just bear with me. I got to do some hokey pokey, I think. We got to get the calculator up. I just want to do a number. I must accidentally click that. Now I can't get access to the... Oh crap, I can't get access to the window bar. Oh, that's a pain in the ass. Okay, I see what's going on now. Hang on, here we go. I'll have to fix that after. So 600,000 one-ton bags. Oh, these are monsters, eh? So each one is 6 feet, and you can only fit just 2,000 pounds, so a one-ton truck. So multiply it by one-ton trucks, which are 20 feet, and 12 million feet. So let's divide that by 55,000 feet to get a mile. That's 2,400 miles of one-ton bags. Bumper to bumper if you put them in a one-ton truck, which is what you're going to need to move them, right? 2,400 miles of one-ton trucks bumper to bumper. And that's a leak, folks. That's what you call a leak. 200,000 tons 2,400 2,400 miles is a leak. Just having a few problems here I got to deal with. There's got to be another way to deal with it. This is stupid. Oh. I'll get a break. Here we go. Let's keep going. How are we doing on time anyway? So 2,400 miles or 1 ton bags is a leak, folks. Well, that's the end of the show, I guess. Let's get through this story, maybe. Yeah, let's get through this story. After decades of lobbying from Bologna, cleaning up Andravia Bay finally began in 2017, required international cooperation funded by Norway, using a ship supplied by Italy. However, numerous damaged fuel rods / assemblies still remain at the site, stored in the radiated buildings that also need to be dismantled and disposed of. The fuel pools are outdoors too. Originally, the project, they spent 30 million euros, 32,000 US, was on track to be completed by 2028. But since the staged war in Ukraine, Moscow has pushed the deadline, which was done to cause inflation worldwide, to the vague point of and feed the nuclear industry or the weapons manufacturers. So, because 30 NATO countries are providing weapons, this is a proxy war we're talking about, right? But they all buy their weapons from the same place. So who came out on top? Other threats lurk below the ocean. Moscow's most recent Arctic development plan outlined efforts to lift a host of nuclear garbage, scuttled, nuclear reactors scuttled by the Soviets in the Barents and Kara Sea, including the K-27 and K-159 nuclear submarines by 2035. These submarines pose the greatest challenges for cleanup efforts. Between them, they contain 1 million curies of radiation, really. We're about a quarter of that released in the first months of Fukushima. Really? A quarter of that? Really? So, there's 88 curies of cesium-137 per gram. So 1 million divided by 88 gives you 11,365 divided by 29 to get ounces. Divide that by 16 to get pounds. And you got 24 pounds. So they're saying that 4 reactor buildings, each of them with around 8 reactor cores at the top of the buildings, only had 24 pounds released. Now the Breakthrough Institute, man. I probably wrote this one too. These people are insane to suggest so little. And they're insane to suggest there's 1 million curies is all that's been released into the Kara Sea and the Arctic. Launched in 1962, the K-27 suffered a radiation leak, one of its experimental liquid metal-cooled reactors, after 3 days at sea. And over the next several years, the Soviet Navy attempted to repair and replace the reactors. In 1979, it gave up and decommissioned the vessel, by taking it out and sinking it. Too radioactive to be dismantled / decommissioned, was towed to the Arctic in 1982 and sank in one of the most beautiful archipelagos, fjords. Sinking it to a measly 100 feet took some effort. The sub was weighed down by asphalt to seal its fuel, but asphalt's not going to seal it. It's very porous, right? And it's going to melt down right away anyway, because it doesn't need oxygen. Filled the reactor, and a hole was punched in the aft ballast tank. Yeah, if you really want to get your cup of stupid, nuclear is where you go, isn't it? Like I've never seen a horror movie that comes close to the nuclear industry. You simply can't come up with anything worse than what they're doing. And the solution will not last forever. The sealant around the reactor, this is not like pouring, like this is the stupidest thing imaginable. Saying you're pouring pavement into a submarine, which is very toxic, so there's not going to be anybody in there directing it. So you're just pouring it in, and if you fill it up, it'll actually sink right there. So I highly suspect he didn't even do that. It was only meant to starve off radiation until 2032. The ocean will break it down in just a decade. In a decade, there'll be endless holes in that submarine. The reactor is not going to protect it. The reactor containment on the submarine is not going to protect it. More troubling still is that the K-27's highly enriched fuel could, in the right circumstances, go into a China syndrome, go into a meltdown. And you say a local release of radiation. No, a nuclear meltdown is not just local, you disgusting monsters. The other submarine, the K-159, was added to the toxic subsea catalog in 2003, but it's positioned north of Murmansk, aside from the Barents Sea, astride of some of the Barents Sea's most fertile fishing grounds and busiest shipping lanes. There's nothing the industry hasn't contaminated. They had 9 sailors on board. They went down with it. There's no doubt that was on purpose. Still loaded with 800 kilograms, 1,600 plus pounds of spent uranium fuel, which is never spent. It's only about 2% of it gets used, right? And they were using MOX fuel, by the way, because they're not conventional reactors, right? So they're using mixed oxide fuel. A radioactive release, this wreck would be devastating not only to Norway, but to Russia. But yet the other one's not. Some of the people that writes these stories, it should be, well, it's not illegal to fucking poison you, as I showed you at the beginning of the story, is it? Russia's radioactive submarines remain a toxic Arctic threat, by Charles Diggs. We've covered that piece of shit numerous times over the years, actually. That was the story we just covered. Social economic assessment of Hartlepool nuclear reactor project. This is the stupidest thing imaginable. And XE is xenon, a nasty friggin' isotope. So they're calling their reactors, their so-called, they don't even have an application into the regulatory agency for, the Xenon 100. A Fallout 76 nuclear codes this week include launch site location. So whenever I look up Fallout, I get endless video games, right? That was on purpose. Oppenheimer would be very disappointed. Why would you invoke Oppenheimer in a video game? Well, because it's hard for people to track down the legacy that way, see? Because you keep running into these obstacles like this. It's despicable, isn't it? Oh, that's nuclear, isn't it? That's what they're good for, is diluting the truth. Former Russian president threatens Poland with radioactive ash, and he's showing with a big stupid smile on his face. Even though it's just simply, it's the United Kingdom media, see? America's newest nuclear stealth bomber will cost $700 million per plane. $700 million for a plane that you can't use. $700 million go up and fly around in the sky, releasing huge amounts of emissions in the upper atmosphere, contaminating the planet, the biosphere, with the emissions from these high-flying. The higher you go, the less fuel efficient you are on top of that. Some of those, the older bombers would burn the equivalent of like 1 million cars in a 24-hour period worth of fuel. Same fuel you would use for 1 million cars in 24 hours. And all these emissions are in the upper atmosphere. Oh no, Dana, it's carbon, Dana. Shut up. And the shares jump on Nuscale's deal. Oh, somebody's happy. The new Ponzi scheme is alive and well. Again, look at this stupid. This friggin' stupid. Oh, he's even got a remote control. Look at him. Party down in South Korea tonight. ESCOM small nuclear reactor plant. Show you the red sky. There's enough idiots to go around when it comes to nuclear. And this is the last story, I think. Unleash your superpower. This gadget lets you detect nuclear radiation. Might as well do it. It's the ultra-fast, sensitive oscillation detector for seeking out gamma, X-ray, and beta radiation, and it fits into your pocket. The radio code 103 is a radiation detector available on Amazon for $325. I'd actually buy it if I could spare it. And if you have more modest needs, a slightly lower spec radio code 102 is only $255. I'd actually buy that if I can afford it, but I can't. But my opinion is a lot of these are going to be not do what they're claiming they're going to do. 200 hours in a single charge. Uh, 65 grams. And I don't know nothing about the company, so I don't know. And then on your phone, you get some incredible statistics. Remember the Geiger counters, that piece of shit company, American company down in Japan with Asby Brown? The hell is the name of them? I can't remember off the top of my head for some reason. They're real degenerates, eh? So you can Bluetooth it to your phone. I'm going to have to get one of them eventually here. It's the first to admit that not everyone needs a radiation. I'm the first to admit not everyone needs a radiation detector. Actually, everybody does need a radiation detector. Still got one more story, I think, to get through, or two more stories or something. Sam Altman-backed nuclear startup signs a major data center contract. Like, why, oh why would you need nuclear for a data center? Why, oh why would you do that? Why would you use geothermal? Why would you use nuclear, for goodness sakes? A deal to supply 100 megawatts of nuclear power. We see these memorandum of understandings, these deals all the time. They never come to fruition, do they? With minimal environmental impact, why would you use nuclear? Oh, they're backed by investors like Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Bill Gates, the monster, Peter Thiel, the moron, the useful idiot, the wealthy useful idiot, no doubt, and the who's who of the AI revolution. Nuclear fusion startups are gaining traction. Are they suggesting that's going to be nuclear fusion, I wonder? They like doing that. They like doing stories like that just to get investors to start bumping up some of their shares so they can sell them, right? That's usually why they do it. They want to sell their shares, and they'll come out with ridiculous stories like Nuscale's today. Oh, Nuscale's, buy, and so their stocks went up in South Korea and Nuscale. And it's a Ponzi scheme, right? They were convicted of a Ponzi scheme in 2011. Oh, they blamed it on a subsidy company, right? Oh, no, it was them. No, it was you piece of shit. Okay, let's come in and close down the poll. We'll call it a night, I suppose. So we're going to get up and get out tomorrow and get the shit kicked out of me, I suppose. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. I was out today on motorcycles scouting places. It's very difficult to find the ideal place, right? Close by. So I got to travel a long way. I got to do a lot of traveling to get to my next spot, to get the boat in the water. That's the way it goes. You got to do what you got to do. We got to start doing the research, and I just love doing that stuff anyway, right? And we got I've been packing tonight, and I was late getting the show tonight because I wanted to. I didn't want to forget the gimbal and the camera, and the batteries. I need to make sure they're going to be topped up because I know the gimbal is good for like 16 hours, but the camera's not. And the camera plugs into a USB charger. And so I got the big packs of USB battery packs. I got the big ones specifically so I can charge up the camera batteries and other things, like the drone. I have the drone with me tomorrow. I got the drone out and laid on the counter right where I got to get my cup of tea, so there's no way I'm going to forget that. And I charged up the drone batteries last night. Oh yeah, we're going to close down a poll, that's right. Should geothermal that actually exists replace the small modular reactors that don't exist in conversations about nuclear power plants? Well, hell yeah, Dana. Booyah, man. That was great. Let's get some music going. I'll call it a night here. We'll let it go with that, maybe. Okay. And so we still haven't heard from Stephen Young. So Stephen Young ain't doing good. I'm going to have to suck it up and call and find out. I'm terrified of calling you. But I need to do it because I'm worried. And if there's any one way I'm going to find out is if I call, that's for sure, right? Let me turn the volume down on that a little bit. Call it a night. Good night, everybody. Thanks for everybody. Good night, everyone. We'll see everybody on the next show tomorrow night. I know some people are worried about me going out and doing research. Oh, instead of making videos, well, I don't think they know me too good. They don't realize what kind of busybody I actually am. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Let me put it that way. Have a great night. Have a great day tomorrow. Hugs for everybody. See everybody on the next one. Take care.